Annyeonghaseyo. My name is Yancey Strickler. Nice to be with you in this very 2020 way. I'm going to share my screen and share a talk with you. I am the co-founder and former CEO of Kickstarter, but I'm here today to talk about a different idea. I want to talk about self-awareness in a crisis, because we are obviously living in a state of crisis at this moment and many states of them. And self-awareness in a crisis sounds like a luxury, like Prada in a pandemic. But this is actually what we need to get through this moment and what are likely to be potentially decades of moments like these. There's an interesting book called The Fourth Turning that analyzes how history changes through generational change. And one of the theories that the book lays out are three different theories of time. The first theory is that time is cyclical. It's a cycle. This notion of time is defined by the seasons, or the cycle of birth and death. The authors contend that up until the Renaissance, the circular notion of time was how human beings saw time. In fact, the first people to start counting years had to argue to others why this was worth doing. For everyone else, time was a loop. We just repeated things. With the Renaissance and technology, we began to have the second theory of time, a progressive theory of time, that as time went on, things would get better. We would become more advanced. This idea didn't really exist before then, but this is how we tend to see time now. The third theory is that time is chaos, that these are just narratives. We're laying over events, and none of this has any real meaning. There's a wonderful book called The Artist's Way by the author Julia Cameron. That's a kind of a self-help book for artists. And it has a really interesting observation about time that speaks to several of these theories we just learned about. Julia Cameron writes, as an artist, you will circle through some of the same issues over and over, each time at a different level. There is no such thing as being done with an artistic life. Frustrations and rewards exist at all levels on the path. Our aim here is to find the trail, establish our footing, and begin the climb. If you'll notice, there are two descriptions of motions she talks about. You will circle through the same issues, and that we will establish our footing and begin the climb. And here you have these two notions of time, of progression and a circular time coming together, and they produce the spiral, a metaphor that time is a spiral that we're constantly repeating through similar challenges or opportunities. And each time we have the opportunity to manifest a better or different version of ourselves. Now, at a moment like now, when the world is falling apart, we feel like people fleeing a zombie hordes. At times, it really does feel almost apocalyptic. I'm talking to you from the West Coast of the US, where we haven't gone outside in days because of smoke. But, if you think about the movies, while most people are just running away from that scary thing, other people, often Tom Cruise, are running towards something with a plan. They're not just running away, they're running towards something. They're already thinking about what that next step is. And so what is it that distinguishes that Tom Cruise character from everyone else? I think it's a higher degree of self-awareness. Now, when we picture self-interest and self-awareness today, we picture this like a hockey stick graph, a chart of whatever we want, money, power, fame, influence, growing so fast that the line slopes up and to the right. This, we've come to think, is the world's best case scenario. But when you think about it, each of the axes on this graph actually extends much farther than we really consider. The now axis, representing time, goes from now all the way into the future. And the y-axis, representing self-interest, it also keeps growing, because as our self-interest grows, so do our responsibilities. They go from me to us. And so we can actually think about there being four distinct spaces of our self-interest. There's now me, what I want and need right now. This is how we think of our self-interest today. There's also future me, what the older, wiser version of me wants me to do. That person becomes real or not real every day based on the choices that I make. There's also now us, my family, my closest friends, the people that I feel responsible for, how my choices affect them. And there's also future us, the world my child will step into and all other kids will step into it. Today, we only think of our self-interest in terms of now me, but yet every decision we make leaves a footprint in each of these spaces. The first time I drew this in my notebook, I thought, what is this a picture of? And I wrote a very simple description next to it. I wrote beyond near-term orientation. This was a simple 2x2 graph to help me see beyond that trap of short-termism. And as I looked at this phrase, I realized that the letters made an acronym. They spelled bento. And I thought about the bento box, the packed lunch with multiple compartments and a lid that lets you carry a variety of dishes, not just one thing. And the bento also honors the Japanese dieting philosophy of hara-hachi bu, which says the goal of a meal is to be 80% full. That way you're still hungry for tomorrow. So Bentoism is the same idea, but for our values and our decisions. A way to not just indulge ourselves in now me, but to create space for the future and the other people in our life that we care about. Now, the bento is not just like a concept, it's an actual tool. It's an interface that you can use. Here's an example, a smoker asking their bento, should I quit smoking? Now, to do this, the smoker would ask each box on its own what it has to say, because each voice will have its own distinct and valid perspective. So if a smoker asks their now us, which is thinking about their friends and family, should I quit smoking? The smoker's now us says, yes, you should quit. Like, we hate that you smoke. When the smoker asks their future us, thinking about their kid says, yes, what if I smoke because of you? Quit. When the smoker asks their future me, should I quit smoking? The future me says, I want there to be a future me. Quit. But when the smoker asks now me says, no, I'm addicted to nicotine. Quitting's going to suck. No way. Keep smoking. And this is a hard voice to reason with because it has a valid point, right? From the perspective of now me, it is addicted to nicotine. It will suffer significant pain, even as these other dimensions of yourself will benefit. But we often get trapped in this sort of passive perspective where we're only thinking about things from this now me, this sort of limited selfish point of view. And even though we know the future will happen, even though we know other people matter, we struggle to really incorporate them into our thinking. Now, this is particularly problematic because it leads us to make bad decisions. Something like addiction, where there's something that's good for now me, even if it's damaging to every other part of who you are, that can seem like a rational decision. You are satisfying a craving. But sacrifice, say giving up something now on behalf of others, or giving up something now on behalf of the future, that looks unthinkable, completely irrational from this passive point of view. So what we need then is to develop an active awareness where we're able to really perceive all these spaces and even have a point of view about them, to have a sense of what we want that future to be, what it is we're working towards, or who is in our now us. Now, knowing how to do this just starts with answering a simple question in each one of these boxes. What does my now me want to need on a day-to-day basis? What do I need to feel okay, to feel settled? Future me, what is that older, wiser version of me whispering to me? What is their wisdom? When I went through and answered these questions, I came up with a lot of different answers, a lot of things that are important, having money in the bank, having good health, having people I love, being challenged. And I eventually shortened that down to a simple phrase that I could keep in mind. So what is my now me value? What is it that I'm looking for? Showing people the matrix I came to see is the value that I provide that is most specific and core to who I am. My future me is telling me to create harmony in the world. I'm a child of divorce, so bringing people together is something I really crave. And also to not sell out, to always put my values above financial concerns. My now us is my family and friends and having a really core group that I have deep focused time with. I'm not on my phone with them. I'm hyper present. And my future us, what am I imagining for my kid? I'm imagining a world with a better matrix where our systems are working to humanity's benefit rather than against it. So I actually make essentially all decisions in my life using this framework. Here's an actual decision that I faced. I do talks for companies, and sometimes I'll be asked to do a talk for a company that I don't particularly like. Now, in the past, when I've asked to do something like this, I've always just said no. And it's felt like a weird challenge of my ethics to do it. It feels like I'm selling out. But after creating the bento, I thought, I should ask the bento this question. I got asked to another one of these talks. And so I asked my bento, should I do a talk for a company I don't like? My now me, which wants to show people the matrix, says yes. You got to support yourself, and this is exactly what you do. This is your thing. My now us says yes. Talking about ideas for an hour and a half with people, like that feels like deep time. That's cool. My future us, which wants to build a better matrix, says absolutely you should do the talk. Like you can't just preach to the choir. This is exactly where you need to be speaking. But my future me, which has that idea of don't sell out, it said no, and it accused me of being a sellout. It said, no, don't do this. And in this moment, I came to realize that this voice that had always said not to do these things was my future me. And my future me was acting like a bouncer, like a guard, standing outside the door and protecting me from things that I might not want. But because I had the active awareness, had the complete vision to see everything that was going on, I had the agency to tap that guard on the shoulder, to tap that bouncer and say, no, it's cool. Like, let this in. I can handle this. This only happens when you're really able to see what you want, to have a strong sense of what's important to you, and to be making decisions, trying to actively incorporate that into what you do.
The World Knowledge Forum